Hello there and welcome back to another video. I hope that you're doing well today. Today is Tuesday and I just hope that your week so far has gone well, and I hope you're doing as well as possible, as well as we can do at the moment. There's not a lot else that we can do but trying to keep good and well. Now yesterday I did a very short video just because it was breaking news about possible return of sport, which is what we've got up here. The coronavirus. Pro sport in England could resume from the 1st of June. The government have given the green light, basically. The headline was from The Guardian, was they've given the green light to the Premier League to be able to start from the 1st of June. So I think this actually takes the Premier League into the second stage, or something like that, into the second stage of the proposals they have to get ready for UEFA by the 25th of May. UEFA have said that they can extend that deadline of the 25th of May if need be, but I don't think that if they can get it done by the 25th of May, I think they would much rather do that rather than put extensions on, because there's about 55 different leagues that need to have their proposals done as well, and if you put extensions on, it'll just extend further and further, and things might get a little bit messier than they have been so far anyway. So I just kind of want to read in a little bit about what is happening here, what they're talking about in here as well. Other things that we're going to talk about today as well is the whole no relegation thing and points per game as well, and also clubs wanting to play at their own venues, their home venues, if they get the chance to do so as well. So let me know what you think in the comments below about any of the things that I mentioned in this video. Please do feel free to do that. And yeah, let me know what you think as well. That's really cool. So step 2 of the roadmap, which cannot begin any earlier than the 1st of June, includes permitting cultural and sporting events to take place behind closed doors for broadcast while avoiding the risk of large-scale social contact. So obviously, while sport can resume from the 1st of June, it's going to be behind closed doors no matter what. I think it's going to be behind closed doors no matter what the sport as well. If any of you are UFC fans, UFC held an event at the weekend where they had one fighter tested positive and was pulled from the card as well, was apparently isolated when he arrived, and his team were isolated when they arrived as well, which was really weird because it wasn't isolated because he came out and did the weigh-ins. Yes, he had a mask on, he had his gloves on as well, stood far apart, but he fist bumped Dana White as well with his gloves on. Some people aren't really, having an issue with that a great deal, but that's not isolating. Isolating is away from everybody. You don't see anybody. You're away from everyone. You're keeping yourself away from everyone to make sure that you're staying as safe as possible and can get well, but everybody else can also stay safe as possible as well without trying to, pass on whatever you've tested positive for. So that was a bit weird, and yeah, but I mean, that their positive is the system has worked because only one of their fighters, one person that was involved in that event, and you take away like referees, commentators, other fighters, cornermen, the technical people, the camera people, lighting, sound, everything like that, and one person tested positive, they are taking that as a win. Depending on what happens with Jacare Souza, we don't know, but it's still it creates a couple more questions, because then you look at, okay, UFC, 3 people in a cage, two fighters and a referee, and then you've got cutmen and stuff like that as well. But football, you got 22 players on a pitch that are going to be running towards each other and wanting to tackle each other for 90 minutes. It's not a 15 or 25-minute fight. It's 90 minutes, potentially, if they decide whether they're going to shorten games or not. It still creates, I don't know, it's uncertain in my mind. It's still uncertain how they're going to pull off football safely. We will see what happens with the Bundesliga anyway, because that is meant to be coming back this weekend, and we will see what happens. The government will wish to open as many businesses and public places as the data and information at the time allows. In order to facilitate the fastest possible reopening of these types of higher risk businesses and public places, the government will carefully phase and pilot reopenings to test their ability to adopt the new COVID-19 secure guidelines. The government will also monitor the carefully the effects of reopening other similar establishments elsewhere in the world as this happens. So again, that could also be looking at like the Bundesliga, what could happen there. The UFC, how did they do their event? They've got another event on Wednesday. They've got another event on Saturday as well. They will see what happens with their fighters and how it's been put together. They are the first sport back, so they have done very well doing that as well. But can they make it so that the next two events that they've got, and in the foreseeable future, can they make them as safe as possible? This is what will happen here. Plotting, let me see. Plotting Project Restart. Elite football in Britain has been suspended since 13th of March with Leicester's 4-0 win over Aston Villa on the 9th of March, last Premier League game, and ours in the Champions League, our Champions League exit was the last European game as well against Atletico Madrid, which is obviously causing a lot of focus in other areas because you had 3,000 Spanish fans coming over to the UK and they were allowed to do so freely. The focus is on, or was on, a return to training in small groups, but the clubs know they need further government approval to do that. They'll hold talks involving the rest of the English football on Thursday, so that'll be good to update on as well, either on Thursday or Friday. Now, clubs will have discussed the medical protocols which need putting in place so that the players can receive assurances that it will be safe for them to resume. That meeting is now over. They're awaiting further details, so that's cool. So a date of the 18th of May, which is 6 days away. So that will be a Sunday. Sunday or Monday? Let me just look. Monday. So it has been penciled in for a return to training, while the 8th of June and 12th of June have been discussed as possible restart dates. UEFA, as I said before, they're asking for the deadline dates. And yeah, so we'll move on from that anyway. But in terms of just football, and please recognise that I say just football when I say this, it looks positive in the fact that football will try and return when it is as safe and healthy to do so. When we look at it as football fans, that is a positive. I am not saying that this, we should ignore what is happening with the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you prefer to call it. They are trying to get themselves to come back. They're trying to make sure that they come back, as I said before, as safely as possible. And hopefully they can do that. I personally still think it's too soon. I think it's very, very soon to come back. You have the 1st of June, you can resume. The 8th of June, 12th of June, it still just feels far too soon in my opinion. But let me know what you think as well. I just feel that we are on the brink, or possibly on the brink, of a second wave of this possibly happening. And if that happens, no sport will happen probably for another year, I would say. And that's just me being me. I'm just putting my thoughts out there. That is my opinion. If something goes wrong with this and a second wave hits badly, and normally what would happen with a second wave, if you go back and look at things like the Spanish flu and other great pandemics of the past. And I say great, I don't mean like, oh, great. I mean like massive pandemics of the past. The second wave is always generally the worst wave, where the most casualties and fatalities happen as well. That's what needs to be avoided here. Whether it means Liverpool get to play for a title or not, I do care. I was going to say I don't care. I do care. But my care for Liverpool winning the title, or getting the opportunity to win the title, however it's done, points per game, we'll come on to that in a minute as well. Points per game, playing for the games, whatever. My care for Liverpool winning the title is much, much less than the people being safe, healthy and well and not dying. That's my opinion anyway. Let us move on to Gary Neville. Gary Neville says points per game, relegation from the Premier League would be unfair. Quote, it's devastating going down at any time, but without even having the opportunity to defend yourself would be too much. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to get the league table up. Now, the Premier League table, we're not going to look at the top. We're going to look at the bottom, right? Now, out of the bottom 6, none of them have won more than 7 games. And I just want to make sure I've got that right. It is right. Wins, draws, and losses. That is right? Yeah. So, out of the bottom 6 here, 6 wins, 7 wins, 6 wins, 7, 7, 5. 18 losses, 17 losses, 16 losses, 14 losses, 16 losses, 12 losses. A lot of draws, and similar sort of numbers in the draw column for everybody else, which means they're on 29 points, 27, 27, 27, 25, and 21. These teams cannot blame a pandemic for being where they are. These teams are the ones that were kicking up the biggest stink about having relegation taken off the table. You cannot argue that they don't deserve to be where they are right now. Two teams outside of the bottom three are level on points with a team in the bottom three. It's goal difference. And all of their goal differences are horrific. Apart from Brighton's, theirs isn't too bad really. These teams deserve to be where they are over the course of the season. Now, people will turn around and say, but they could absolutely turn it around. They could go and win all of their games. A lot of these teams are going to be facing like your top 6, top 4 teams. They've picked up average of 7 wins over the course of 29 games, which means they haven't won on an average 22 games out of the whole season. In what world do they believe that Norwich are going to get out of the bottom 3? That they're going to get off the bottom of the table? I don't mind Norwich. I really don't. I actually felt that the way that they play football, I would love to see these guys, stay in the Premier League. I would. Villa spent huge amounts of money. But what have they done? They haven't done anything. Bournemouth do what they do every single season and spend barely anything. They're in this. These teams are where they are. West Ham, everybody. These teams are where they are because of how they've done throughout the course of 29 games. So I truly believe, if you want to go by points per game basis, these teams have already done their best to not do their best. They've coasted because they want to just, if we get 17th in the league, we'll stay in the Premier League, we'll get some Premier League money, it's fine, it'll go back into the club, we won't necessarily spend it on players and all that sort of business, we won't reinvest like the fans want us to or anything like that. These clubs do deserve to be where they are. Now, Watford have been putting on the fight for their lives. Now, whether it means that they would go down or not, or Bournemouth would stay, or Aston Villa would move up, whoever, it doesn't really matter. But all of these teams deserve to be where they are over the course of the season. Now, Gary Neville, obviously, because Gary Neville likes to go against the grain, he doesn't believe that relegation is fair on the points per game basis. He thinks his football's to be played, it's right for the football to be played for promotion and relegation, but he thinks points per game basis to be relegated with 9 games with so much to play for, so tight at the bottom, and with so much at stake, it doesn't feel right to him personally. He thinks it feels unfair. What he's seen the last couple of weeks has been quite unsavoury. Clubs have been demonstrating their self-interest to try and jostle for positions, but the big 6 and the powerhouses at the top will always be able to have that thumb pressed down on the others somehow because they do carry the weight. He thinks it's unfair for points per game. It's important. I voiced that. It's devastating. Going down, yeah, I've read that before. Now, on a points per game basis, Liverpool would finish with 107 points if we did that, which would probably give us the biggest points lead in history. And I think that would be the bottom 3 going down at that point anyway. I'm not entirely sure. Null and void was never going to happen. Now the government the FA and I think the Premier League have said, that null and voiding, no relegation and no champions, isn't going to happen. So basically, what it means is effectively guaranteeing promotion and relegation, and that the title would be won. It was never going to happen. The null and void brigade, your Everton fans, Arsenal fans for some reason, United fans as well, bottom of the table fans especially, were wanting the season null and voided, so that they could, just be like, it's okay, we're null and voiding the season for the health and safety of the public. But now that that's taken off the table, now they're all exceptionally vocal about it not being null and voided, and they're really angry about it as well. It is what it is. In the same breath, the bottom 6 deserve to be where they are, just as much as the top 6 deserve to be where they are right now, as it stands, throughout the course of the season. In all the leagues that have finished, Belgium, France, and Holland, people say those seasons were null and voided, but they hadn't been. This is not new news. It was never going to be null and void. Relegation is the main issue, and I've said that early on as well. I said that it's not necessarily about the European places and that whoever's the champions of the league. that's less of a legal battle, in my opinion. Relegation and promotion from the championship will always be, and relegation from the championship will always be the most contentious ones, because those teams will say, we could have got out of this situation if you'd let us, or if you'd null and voided the season, we could have just restarted next season and had 22 teams and all this sort of stuff. You cannot not reward the championship teams for what they've done this season. You can't then turn around and say, well, it's fine, we'll just promote two and won't promote a playoff team. You can't do that. Not a chance. Not a chance. Now, what else are we talking about here? Return dates. I don't think I was talking about return dates. I am not sure. Oh, yeah. Clubs hope that the season can be finished at their own stadiums. Now, the Premier League chief, everybody would prefer to play home and away if possible. No one has suggested relegation not being in play. So, it came out yesterday that there were, the whole neutral venue thing is what the lower clubs in the league were fighting about a great deal. They were very vocal about it. So basically what these guys have said is everybody would prefer to play home and away if at all possible, and we'll make it happen. I felt that neutral venues would be the sensible thing to do, because then you take away all of the travel that all of the players and the teams and the coaches and everything like that. You take away all the travel up and down the country and the possible spreading of this virus going further. Basically, was my point. That was my point of view. But if the lower teams in the leagues, that, as they say, they feel more strongly about it than others. It's an ongoing dialogue, and they've been talking to the authorities about the conditions in which we could get the Premier League back up and running, and taking all of that advice on board. If the lower teams in the league are going to kick up this much of a fuss about it, and because they're not getting their null and voided season that they felt that they should have had, then fine, play your games at Anfield, play your games at the Etihad, play your games at Old Trafford. Most likely stadiums where you wouldn't have won anyway, but you might have stood a bit more of a chance of winning if you were at a neutral venue. And that's not being salty, because that means that if Liverpool get to play at Anfield, whether there's a crowd there or not, it's irrelevant. We get to play at home. People don't like coming to Anfield because of the atmosphere, but also because Anfield is our fortress. If you don't want to go to a neutral venue, but you'd rather come to Anfield, fair play to you, but you probably more likely confirm your own relegation before doing anything else. So, there's a lot being spoken about here. I'm going to get out of here right now, just before it hits 18 minutes on the video. It's a longer video today, but there's a lot of thoughts to get through, in my opinion. So, let me know what you think in the comments below about the whole things that we've talked about in this video. And as I say, we'll just see how this whole thing progresses as we do, day by day. We'll see what happens anyway. And as I say, we'll see what happens with the Bundesliga this weekend as well, and review that as well. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do like it and subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you once again.